I'm Jeremy. Today is day 30 of reading Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. Let's get started. We're on page 150. Be quiet, Miss Patil. But Malfoy, that's enough, Mr. Weasley. Potter, follow me. Now. Harry caught sight of Malfoy, Crabbe, and Goyle's triumphant faces as he left, walking numbly in Professor McGonagall's wake as he strode toward the castle. He was going to be expelled. He just knew it. He wanted to say something to defend himself, but there seemed to be nothing wrong with his voice. Something wrong with his voice. Professor McGonagall was sweeping along without even looking at him. He had to jog to keep up. Now he'd done it. He hadn't even lasted 2 weeks. He'd be packing his bags in 10 minutes. What would the Dursleys say when he turned up on the doorstep? Up the front steps, up the marble staircase inside, and still Professor McGonagall didn't say a word to him. She wrenched open the doors and marched along corridors with Harry trotting miserably behind her. Maybe she was taking him to Dumbledore. He thought of Hagrid, expelled, but allowed to stay on as a gamekeeper. Perhaps he could be Hagrid's assistant. His stomach twisted as he imagined it, watching Ron and the others become wizards while he stumped around the grounds, carrying Hagrid's bag. Professor McGonagall stopped outside a classroom. She opened the door and poked her head inside. "Excuse me, Professor Flitwick, could I borrow wood for a moment?" Wood? Thought Harry, bewildered. Was wood a cane she was going to use on him? But wood turned out to be a person, a burly 50-year boy who came out of Flitwick's class looking confused. "Follow me, you two," said Professor McGonagall, and they marched up the corridor. Wood looking curiously at Harry. "In here." Professor McGonagall pointed them into a classroom that was empty except for Peeves, who was busy writing rude words on the blackboard. "Out, Peeves!" she barked. Peeves threw the chalk into a bin, which clanged loudly, and he swooped out cursing. Professor McGonagall slammed the door behind him and turned to face the two boys. "Potter, this is Oliver Wood. Wood, I found you a seeker." Wood's expression changed from puzzlement to delight. "Are you serious, Professor?" "Absolutely," said Professor McGonagall crisply. "The boy's a natural. I've never seen anything like it. Was that your first time on a broomstick, Potter?" Harry nodded silently. He didn't have a clue what was going on, but he didn't seem to be expelled, and some of the feelings started to come back to his legs. "He cut that thing in his hand after a 50-foot dive," Professor McGonagall told Wood. "Didn't even scratch himself. Charles Lee Weasley couldn't have done it." Wood was now looking as though all his dreams had come true at once. "Ever seen a game of Quidditch, Potter?" he asked excitedly. "Wood's captain of the Gryffindor team," Professor McGonagall explained. "He's just a build for a seeker, too," said Wood, now walking around Harry and staring at him. "Light, speedy. We'll have to get him a decent broom, Professor. A Nimbus 2000 or a clean sweep 7, I'd say. I shall speak to Professor Dumbledore and see if we can't bend the first year's rule. Heaven knows, we need a better team than last year. Flattened in that last match by Slytherin. I couldn't look Severus Snape in the face for weeks." Professor McGonagall peered sternly over her glasses at Harry. "I want to hear you're training hard, Potter, or I may change my mind about punishing you." She suddenly smiled. "Your father would have been proud," she said. "He was an excellent Quidditch player himself." "You're joking." It was dinner time. Harry had just finished telling Ron what had happened when he left the grounds with Professor McGonagall. Ron had a piece of steak and kidney pie halfway to his mouth, but he'd forgotten all about it. "Seeker?" he said. "But first years never. You must be the youngest house player in about a century," said Harry, shoveling pie into his mouth. He felt particularly hungry after excitement of the afternoon. Wood told me." Ron was so amazed, so impressed, he just sat and gaped at Harry. "I start training next week," said Harry. "Only don't tell anyone. Wood wants to keep it a secret." Fred and George Weasley now came into the hall, spotted Harry, and hurried over. "Well done," said George in a low voice. "Wood told us. We're on the team too. Beaters." "I tell you, we're going to win that Quidditch Cup for sure this year," said Fred. "We haven't won since Charlie left, but this year's team is going to be brilliant." "You must be good, Harry. Wood was almost skipping when he told us." "Anyway, we've got to go. Lee Jordan, he reckons he's found a new secret passageway out of school. But it's that one behind the statue of Gregory the Smarmy that we found in our first week. See you." Fred and George had hardly disappeared when someone far less welcome turned up. Malfoy, flanked by Crabbe and Goyle. "Having a last meal, Potter? When are you getting the train back to the Muggles?" "You're a lot braver now that you're back on the ground and you've got your little friends with you," said Harry coolly. There was, of course, nothing at all little about Crabbe and Goyle, but as the high table was full of teachers, neither of them could do more than crack their knuckles and scowl. "I'd take you on at any time on my own," said Malfoy. "Tonight, if you want. Wizard's duel. Wands only, no contact." "What's the matter? Never heard of a wizard's duel before, I suppose?" "Of course he has," said Ron, wheeling around. "I'm his second. Who's yours?" Malfoy looked at Crabbe and Goyle, sizing them up. "Crabbe," he said. "Midnight, all right? We'll meet you in the trophy room. That's always unlocked." While Malfoy had gone, Ron and Harry looked at each other. "What is a wizard's duel?" said Harry. "And what do you mean, you're my second?" "Well, a second's there to take over if you die," said Ron casually, getting started at last on his cold pie. Catching the look on Harry's face, he added quickly, "But most people only die in proper duels, you know, with real wizards. The most you and Malfoy will be able to do is send sparks at each other. Neither of you knows enough magic to do any real damage. I bet he expected you to refuse. Anyway. And what if I wave my wand and nothing happens?" "Throw it away and punch him on the nose," Ron suggested. "Excuse me?" They both looked up. It was Hermione Granger. "Can't a person eat in peace in this place?" said Ron. Hermione ignored him and spoke to Harry. "I couldn't help overhearing what you and Malfoy were saying." "Bet you could," Ron muttered. "And you must think of wandering around the school at night. Think of the points you'll lose for Gryffindor if you're caught. And you're bound to be. It's really selfish of you. And it's really none of your business," said Harry. "Goodbye," said Ron. All the same, it wasn't what you'd call the perfect end to the day, Harry thought, as he lay awake much later listening to Dean and Seamus fall asleep. Neville wasn't back from the hospital wing. Ron had spent all evening giving him advice, such as, if he tries to curse you, you'd better dodge it, because I can't remember how to block them. There was a very good chance they were going to get caught by Filch or Mrs. Norris, and Harry felt he was pushing his luck, breaking another school rule today. On the other hand, Malfoy's sneering face kept looming up out of the darkness. This was his big chance to beat Malfoy face to face. He couldn't miss it. 11:30, Ron muttered at last. "We'd better go." They pulled on their bathrobes, picked up their wands, and crept across the tower room, down the spiral staircase, and into the Gryffindor common room. A few embers were still glowing in the fireplace, turning all the armchairs into hunched black shadows. They had almost reached the portrait hole when a voice spoke from the chair nearest to them. "I can't believe you're going to do this, Harry." The lamp flickered on. It was Hermione Granger, wearing a pink bathrobe and a frown. "You!" said Ron furiously. "Go back to bed. I almost told your brother," Hermione snapped. "Percy, he's a prefect. He put a stop to this." Harry couldn't believe anyone could be so interfering. "Come on," he said to Ron. He pushed open the portrait of the fat lady and climbed through the hole. Hermione wasn't going to give up that easily. She followed Ron through the portrait hole, hissing at them like an angry goose. "Don't you care about Gryffindor? Do you only care about yourselves? I don't want Slytherin to win the House Cup, and you'll lose all the points I got from Professor McGonagall for knowing about the switching spells." "Go away,"